Hello everyone. As some of you may know, I recently started a 35th scale alternate timeline World War II-ish mech builds, and made the Russian mech as the first one in the series. As the second one, I continued the series with the German and built this Tiger 1 mech crawler. This is gonna be a long build, so let's go. Aside from the cardboard as the main building material, I'm using various plastic bits critical to decorate this mech, such as straws to make the gun, pen tip, plastic tubes, round wooden jewelry beads, plastic ring bits, Q-tip shafts, bigger bases, bottle caps, and a selection of bits and beads to complete the riveting work and bolt details. I wanted this build to look as original as it gets to the actual Tiger 1 tank, so I printed blueprints in 1/35th scale. You can find the link to the source in the video description if you ever need it for your own projects. I cut all the sections to build the turret, then started gluing each piece accordingly. This is the first time I'm replicating a model from blueprints, and I gotta say it made things far more easier compared to trying to make it from imagination or constantly looking at photos of the model over the internet. The gun section was somewhat harder to make as I had to bend the cardboard piece in an awkward angle. And as I didn't pay for a detailed blueprint showing technical measurements and such, I had to cover up certain spots randomly. Some parts I covered unnecessarily and so on. I don't know the deal with the extension of the turret. I think it is there for extra storage, as I see hatches on it from the images I had to check, or some sort of a compartment for radio. It was too late by the time I realized there was a gap right in the middle of it, where it meets the turret. I didn't bother cutting it open or remaking it. I covered that mistake up later with a laid down flag. As I usually do, I covered up the gaps and gave it the texture I wanted with the usual method of CA glue and baking soda combination. Sanded off the excess with sanding papers and Dremel sanding bits. Once the turret done, I started working on the gun. Tiger has a rather complicated gun, I must say, which I couldn't glue a random pipe for it. It has a telescopic structure, I think. So I measured, cut and glued pieces with different thicknesses, and utilized masking tape to make some parts thicker. The most complicated part of the gun was the muzzle brake. I can't replicate this detail with what I have, but I still wanted to go for a look as close to the original as possible. So used a syringe cap, a uniball pen piece, and a skewer piece for this. Opened up the holes with Dremel bits and completed this part of the gun. After the gun, I started working on the section where it meets the turret. At this point, I went back and forth between the blueprint and original images from the internet to understand what is what in what I'm building. Next order of business was to work on the rest of the details of the turret. Made the necessary hatches, entry points, peeping ports, and such. Some of these details may not be accurate, but keep in mind that this is my first time ever replicating a real-life vehicle. Well, at least upper half of it. Opened up 3 holes right by the gun. I don't exactly know what these are used for, maybe to take a peek out or to shoot out from them. Another hard part was to make the 3 smoke launchers on each side. I had to find the right beads with the right thicknesses that is still round in shape and would look like smoke canisters. Used cardboard strips to build the platform for these to sit on, and then glued each bead with different angles as close to the real thing as possible, supposedly covering all the frontal angles once fired. Used 6 medium-sized beads to make it look like the original bolts around the gun. Smallest size beads around the side hatch and felt like adding on the smoke launcher's platform as they looked very dull. Finally, I glued the plastic cap underneath the turret and completed the third part of the build. I started on the lower body of this mech, copying its lines from the blueprint onto the cardboard. At this point, I kept looking between what I see on the blueprint and various images. Since there wouldn't be any tracks, road wheels, suspension bars and such, I had to imagine some parts of this section on the go. But thanks to Tiger Tank having a relatively boxy shape, it wasn't all that complicated and hard to make. With every piece cut and glued, I started seeing a better picture of what it would look like once done. Lower body received its share of gap filling and texture job just like the turret. Then I added a strip of cardboard on the sides as the somewhat iconic side armor plates, I suppose. I'm really not a tank expert, and between making these and producing videos I don't have all that time to educate myself in this topic. So let me know what they are if you do, or just consider them as extra armor plating as I do. Following my references, I added rivets on these. And later on I added 3 hatches right by the front of the vehicle. Okay, so these grills were somewhat an unnecessary time-consuming detail with this project. I don't have a meshy material or can't really make a wavy shape ones with the stuff I have, so instead I improvised a pair of grid-like ones using cardboard, cardstock material and steering sticks. Retrospectively speaking, the replication of this unit of the vehicle ended up being incorrect, to say the least. It was meant to be leveled with the tank, whereas this sticks upwards by about 3 mm. But for the rest of the details, I tried to stay true to the blueprint here. For the pair of exhaust pipes, I bent armature wires to hold a thick plastic straw piece. Then glued bent cardboard pieces that looked like the heat shield or protective piece, I suppose, around them. Added a pair of bits on top of the exhaust pipes, which I removed later on as I hated looking at them. Staying loyal to the reference images, I tried to replicate hatches and such by the rear end of it, and made these cylindrical objects on the back from cardstock, cardboard and CA glue cap cuts. I think these are some sort of oil or even most likely air filters, since there are rubber hoses, I think, connecting to these in the real thing. Speaking of those hoses, I made 4 of these pipes out of chopsticks, but ended up not being able to use them as they don't allow the turret to rotate. Instead, I rolled up some air drying clay and put them there, and completed them with a pair of armature wires supposedly holding them there. This cleared the path for the turret's rotation. Remove these ugly looking exhaust heads. Instead, cut a pair of fitting skewers and drilled holes in them. Closed their tops with jewelry pieces and completed them with 6 rivets or bolts on top of each. I took a break working on the rear side and started detailing the front. Using a wooden bead, I made the MG hole. Utilized a Q-tip shaft for the MG sticking out. Sloping front section looked boring, so I added these panels there to add some extra panel detail with cardstock. After them, I worked on making the driver's hatch as close to the original as possible. I used jewelry bits to make a pair of headlamps close to what the original thing had, and completed the front section with rivet work on the panel details. I twisted some armature wire into a towing cable form as much as I could. Added them there on both sides while making sure the turret rotates freely over them. With that out of the way, I'm done with the lower part of this. To be honest with you, at this point I had very strong urges to keep going on with all the tanky assortments like the road wheels, tracks, and so on. Screw the alternate history Mech Walker and finish this baby up as a replica model. But I ended up staying loyal to my original goal. So I cut off some panels with rectangular cutouts on them. I initially planned this to have 4 large legs and 2 balancing legs in the front, but I decided to give it 2 rather smaller legs to the far back as well. My logic demanded that this would be so heavy it would require as many legs to carry its weight as possible. I used my regular method of making the leg parts. Once I had the stubs, so to say, I glued them in their places so I could work easier on it. For the front legs, I imagined them to be more like claws, clearing out light obstacles or grabbing onto things if pulling the vehicle would be needed on rocky terrain. Or to terrorize the enemy, maybe, I don't know. At this point, it started to already look like something out of RTS game called KKND from my childhood. Shouting out to whoever remembers or knows KKND in the comment section, it sure was an interesting game. Speaking of games, I'm thinking about diving into more builds from games. I was thinking about making some stuff from Command & Conquer series, maybe a Mammoth tank or Hero airship from Red Alert 2, or maybe something from StarCraft series. I'll sure be making more stuff from Age of Empires series in the future to fill the medieval gap in my content menu. But let me know if you have some interesting ideas. Anyway, back to the build. I found the lower part plain and dull, especially it would be after the paint job. So I made and added a pair of entry hatches on both sides, and added more panels in between each leg so I could decorate them with rivet details. Added some round bits over the leg joints to give a more mechanical or moving feeling to the legs. This is like a regular thing I do for these creations. I should stop describing these steps maybe. I added more circular bits to the armor bits, or protective panels over the legs, just like the Russian mech I made. Now, at this point I started to feel like it was a bad idea to keep making the legs without making the feet. They kept on looking like stumps, so I decided to add triangular cuts in a somewhat random fashion to try to make them look more interesting, I suppose. But then they started to look like trees, roots exposed over the ground. As a last result, I started adding extensions to the feet as if they're like fingers or something like that, helping to hold on to the ground while on the move. This also enabled me to add and show hydraulic details on the feet, adding more moving feeling, I suppose. I kept on adding bits here and there wherever I saw an empty spot. Added more armor pieces on the feet in order to save the legs and save myself from making the entire legs from scratch a second time. Me being me, soon enough, inside of the legs started to bother me, so I added cables and cords and such down there, even though they won't be visible all that much. After that, the front looked too empty. In the original Tiger tanks, they attached spare tracks there. Instead of that, I decided to make 4 more claws and attach them there. Logic being these claws would get dull if they ever were sharp, and would be broken or damaged easier and needed replacing. I sandwiched a piece of cardboard cutout in between 2 bent steering sticks pieces to make one. Closed up their gaps with more cardboard and baking soda. Then sanded them off to give them their final shape. I drilled the necessary holes for armature wire to get in, glued the claws there, and then closed them up with armature wires. Looking at it now, it might have looked better if I made 1 more for each side, I suppose. After that, I added various sizes of beads, cardboard and cardstock punches as rivets wherever I saw fit. And finally, I covered up my mistake on the turret with a nice flag. For this, I rolled air drying clay as thin as I could, cut it off by 3.5 by 5 centimeters in size, and covered the turret extension where there would have been a gap in the original model. With some soft brushes, I dabbed on the clay to make it look like it covered over something underneath and to make it look more convincing that it's a fabric. I don't know if that's successful really. After all the shenanigans, I primed this in a very dark grey mixing black and grey Vallejo primers. I couldn't really decide whether to paint this in an urban paint like grey tones or deserty paints at first, then decided on the desert tan-like color. Kept on adding various diluted paint mixtures over many coats to see where I'm going with this. Sometimes I hate the painting process, it kills me to not being able to decide, and I usually end up with something I had no intention to finish my creation with. Anyway, I ended up with a too yellowish color, so I warmed it up with some brown in the mixture. Then played around with the idea of adding khaki in the mixture and applied it on some sections. I kinda liked it and applied it over the entire thing. Keep in mind that I do experiment along the way and share the process with you. My logic usually tells me that there is no bad paint job, just that's okay paint job. Under regular circumstances, I should have painted this with a paint scheme in my mind from the start and paint most of it with airbrushing. Guess the two things I don't have: A plan, and B, an airbrush. Anyway, at this point, I'm done with the main color scheme of this and decided to differentiate certain parts a bit, like armor plates on the legs. Painted the spare claws and towing cables and such, and started to like the direction of this paint job. Didn't make the same mistake I always do and used the dark rubber paint to paint the hoses and the cables with it. Dabbed the rivets with diluted darker tone of the base paint as usual. And painted some parts like hinges, handles and such with the same color. Painted the hydraulics with natural steel. It always is a nice touch to use steel or bronze color here and there, even if it doesn't make much sense. Painted the flag with red over 2 coats and completed the rest of it. Then, in order to add chipping detail, I dabbed random spots where I thought paint would be worn off with black. Then added rust paint and then touched with natural steel and gunmetal colors. Now here I couldn't really paint a proper Wehrmacht cross all that good, so I made a pair using thick paper and glued it on both sides. Decided to add a unit number for this and painted 214 on each side of the turret with red and white. To bind all the painted sections and to make it look dirtier or used up, I applied a filter, well, basically heavily diluted mixture of all paints I used previously with some dark red color added in it. This is something I do most of the time as well, maybe I should skip explaining this too in the future. Added black in it to apply filter over the lower parts and feet section as well. Applied black wash on the sides over the rivets and such to finish the paint job. And finally applied rust pigments on and around the exhaust units. This was a must, I think. Some dark pigments on the lower parts around the turret as well as black around the gun's muzzle brake. And some mud green sand pigments over the claws. To populate this piece, I bought this Tamiya figure set in 35th scale. I didn't want to order another tank crew or regular soldiers. These two guys seemed perfect for a change. Not every vehicle is in a marching or fighting posture. This one Tiger Mech Walker is under maintenance. It has some nice accessories in it other than the 2 crewmen, and is made to fit with these German tanks, including the Tiger one. It comes with an engine that you can assemble, and it looks like it could be displayed in an appropriate Tamiya Tiger or another tank kit. I'm skipping the engine unit for this build, I don't need it. First time I'm buying a kit from Tamiya, compared to at least Zvezda I bought and used for the previous Mech build. I'm somewhat disappointed with the flashes and mold lines I had to clean up, but other than that I'm happy with the level of detail. So for the paint job, I primed them as usual. Painted their skins over 2 coats with flesh tones. Painted their uniforms over 30 diluted coats of various mixtures of paint. Painted their hairs showing underneath their caps. And their boots with orange, brown and smoke colors. Applied flash wash and black wash and finished their painting along with the accessory items that I painted off the camera. I made the base the usual way of using plywood and styrofoam. Made some wall plaster cement looking blocks using a plastic box lid. Intentionally kept their water more than the usual ratio so I could trim them to fit the base better in a circular shape. Hot glued each designated piece in their spot. Painted it all with regular black craft paint and then painted them with various tones of grey paints. I was going for a cement floor kinda look here. I can't say if I achieved that or not. I don't exactly know what tone of grey cement looks like. Applied leftover dark grey wash intentionally sloppily. Some of the blocks had some grooves and such, where this wash would show its effect more. After that I dropped some black wash here and there, as if it's leaked oil residue. Then I guess I got bored and wanted to try something here. Covered the entire surface with it, only to spray IPA over it. IPA reacts somewhat interestingly with water. I really can't say what it does, but it leaves some spots in different colors, resulting in an almost specky look once dried. Anyway, here's the result of that experiment. Maybe I could work on this more in the future. Back to that oil or fuel spillage, I made that at this point. Assuming this location was outdoors, there would be some grass growing from the cracks and such. I applied some greenery here and there. Before I started this build, I kinda wanted this build to have some sort of industrial elements like a wall, a crane piece and such in the background, but it both would make this build bigger than I could afford to display, and in a circular base it just didn't make much sense. So outdoors it was. Anyway, made it look dirty with weathering powders here and there and sprayed IPA to seal them on the base for good. Once the base paint and weathering powders completely dried, I started putting everything on it. Attached the Mech Walker with PVA glue. This time I didn't attach pegs to it, as drilling necessary holes on the base would crack the wall plaster slabs. Drilled holes of the camera for figures to be inserted into. Trying to capture a scene where they're about to open up a panel in the back. I didn't show the painting process of each accessory item before, so you can see their painted and assembled forms here. Since these items were made scale appropriately for a Tiger 1 tank, putting the oil barrel or the fuel canisters next to the feet look off scale. But when you take a look at the figures, it kinda makes sense. You start understanding the massiveness of this vehicle, and the off-scale looking items scattered around, it kinda makes sense. Or at least that's how I felt like during putting these on the base. Finally, remember I made these for the Mech and couldn't use them. I didn't trash them and painted them in darker bronze color. I used these as scatter objects, some sort of spare parts scattered around the vehicle. This helped me hide gaps and such, and make the base look less boring, I suppose. With this completed, I'm done with this second nation in this fictional alternate timeline Mech Walker series. I still have to do a Japanese, a British and an American version in the future. Let me know which one you think I should do next. I honestly lean towards the Japanese one for the next one in line. Make a smaller anti-infantry type of a vehicle instead of a big bulky one for Japanese version. Making a smaller, more compact something also would give me some breathing space for me, as this took almost a month to complete. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and feel free to share me your ideas. Thank you for being here and watching this. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.